Macmillan Audio presents The Seagull by Ann Cleeves. Read for you by Janine Birkett.
Prologue. June 1995. The woman could see the full sweep of the bay, despite the dark and the absence of streetlights where she stood. Sometimes it felt as if her whole life had been spent in the half-light. In her dreams, she was moonlit, neon-lit, or she floated through the first gleam of dawn. Night was still the time when she felt most awake. She was waiting for footsteps, for the approach of the person she'd arranged to meet. In the far distance, she caught the noise of the town, cheap music and alcohol-fueled high-pitched laughter. It might be Sunday night, but people were still partying, spilling out of the bars and clubs, lingering on the pavements because this was June and the weather was beautiful, sultry and still. The fun fair at Spanish City was closed for the day and quiet. She could see the silhouettes of the rides, marked by strings of coloured bulbs, gaudy in full sunlight, entrancing now. The full moon shone white on the dome, on the tower of the lighthouse behind her, and on the seductive Art Deco curves of the Seagull. "If only you knew," she thought. "You sophisticated customers in your dinner jackets and glittering dresses, sitting on the terrace drinking cocktails and champagne. If only you knew what really goes on there." Lost in thought, she'd stopped listening out for him. She only knew he was there when she felt him behind her, the breath on her neck, the hands on her shoulders. Chapter 1. John watched the door from his wheelchair and wondered who'd be dragged in to speak to them today. An orderly carried through a mug of tea and left it on the floor beside him, though he must have realised it would be impossible for John to reach it from his chair. John considered yelling at him to show a bit of respect, but decided it wasn't worth the effort. Because there was a visitor, there were chocolate biscuits on the plate in the chaplain's office, but they wouldn't be brought out until after the lecture. A treat released only if the group behaved well. They formed a circle in the chapel, a group of elderly men with the same grey skin and ill-fitting clothes, and John wondered how it had come to this. He had no place here. When he'd first arrived, he'd been consumed by an anger that had kept him awake at night, planning revenge, dreaming of hurt. But the routine had become reassuring, and now he lived from meal to meal, and he was drowsy for most of the time. He seemed to pass his days in aimless half-sleep, waiting for the stretch to be over and for life to begin again, for those small occasional moments of joy that made everything worthwhile. At one time, he'd looked forward to these meetings as a break from the everyday boredom of the wing. Now he resented them for reminding him of the world outside. Around him the men were chatting, but the sound washed over him, and despite the background noise, he still heard the visitor arriving before the rest of them. The sound of the key in the lock at the other end of the corridor, the heavy bell sound of the gate opening, then being locked again, and of the keys being returned to the belt pouch. One time, he'd been the visitor being shown through the door, but that had been so long ago that it felt as though he was remembering another person, or a character in a story. There were footsteps on the polished lino. Then the keys were out again. Now the other men could hear the sound, and there was a murmur of anticipation. Poor suckers.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?